In the history of world painting, there have been many works that truly make one's blood run cold. But today we will talk about paintings that do not look frightening or grotesque at first glance. In this video, I have gathered 3 paintings, seemingly harmless at first, whose meaning sends chills down your spine once you begin to understand them. A person who sees this painting for the first time, without knowing its title, might even feel a sense of tenderness. A young peasant woman dressed in white approaches a mother sitting at the edge of a forest to kiss her baby. At first, the scene looks gentle and intimate, but gradually, the details of the painting begin to form a disturbing chain of meaning. At first, it may seem that the travelling woman has simply stopped to rest, to sit on a tree stump, feed her child, and then continue on her way. But if you look closely at the baby's face, everything becomes painfully clear. The child's skin is deathly pale, almost bluish. He is not alive. The woman bending over the infant is not a woman at all. She is death, and she has come for the child. The mother looks at the woman in white with a dark, tense expression. She appears to be in the earlier stages of accepting death, denial, and anger. Yet it seems she is already preparing to loosen her grip, to let the child go. The artist, Janis Rozentals, depicted in this painting a meeting with death, ordinary, quiet, and inevitable. The painting was created in 1897, at a time when infant mortality was tragically common. Many children did not survive their first years of life, largely due to the poor state of medicine. Frozen on the mother's face is a grimace of horror, one that is about to turn into pain and then into hysterical despair. The stranger herself is barefoot and thin. If she were to straighten up, she would tower over the mother. Her enormous height emphasizes her inhuman nature. She is a being that has come from the forest behind her to take the child away. Although the painting radiates hopelessness, the artist attempts to explain the essence of death as an unavoidable phenomenon. Not everyone who enters this world will live to old age. From a theological point of view, God is merciful. He allows the lives of infants to be taken in order to spare them from future suffering. Today, many would argue with this idea, but 120 years ago, when this painting was created, people thought differently. They relied on the will of God. They relied on it, yet they could never fully accept it. This is evident in the mother's gesture. Her hand clutches the child tightly, unwilling to give him up to the stranger in white. In fairy tales, death can be defeated, by the power of love, for example. But in real life, even the strongest love in the world, a mother's love, does not always win. Rozentals depicted precisely such a moment. We know for certain that the infant's death has already occurred. This is indicated by the bluish skin, the closed eyes, and the white clothing, the same white worn by the stranger who has just kissed the child on the forehead. And it is this hopelessness, this real, absolute helplessness in the face of death, that is the most terrifying of all. At first glance, the viewer does not immediately understand what is happening in the painting. It seems to depict a harmless landscape. Autumn, overcast weather, heavy clouds on the horizon. A priest and a soldier stand before a withered field. Only upon closer inspection does the viewer notice that the field is strewn with rows of dead bodies. The dark mounds are in fact the heads of fallen soldiers. The colour of their uniforms and their yellowed faces blends with the grass. The bodies have become part of the landscape. The number of the dead is impossible to count. The priest is not there by chance. He is reading prayers for the fallen. This is Vasily Vereshchagin's painting, Defeated, Requiem, in which the artist portrayed his own personal tragedy. Vasily Vereshchagin was a Russian battle painter and one of the few artists of the 19th century who knew war not from stories, but from experience. He took part in military campaigns, accompanied the army on marches, and often found himself on the front lines. Vereshchagin saw battles, the wounded, and the dead with his own eyes, and that is why his paintings are devoid of heroic pathos. He depicted war as it truly was, cruel, senseless, and merciless to human life. In 1877, the Russian painter volunteered for the Balkan War, leaving Paris, where he had his studio and was working at the time. Vereshchagin was assigned to the headquarters of the Russian army as a war artist. At the same time, he took part in combat and was severely wounded in June. But the most terrible event came later. In August, during the third assault on Plevna, the artist's own brother, Sergey, who served as an officer, was killed. This death profoundly affected Vereshchagin's later work. Upon learning of his brother's fate, Vasily went in search of his body, but without success. The slaughter was so vast that it was impossible to find him. So many victims of war had been gathered in one place. Inspired by this mournful search, he painted Defeated, Requiem, perhaps the most piercing and deeply personal work in the entire Balkan series. Before us lies an endless field, scattered with the mutilated and looted bodies of Russian soldiers, desecrated by the Turks. Rows of dead men stretch into the distance, all the way to the horizon. A priest reads prayers for the fallen. A stormy sky and barely visible rays of sunlight offer a fragile hope that one day the clouds will part and the bloodshed will come to an end. The priest's face is calm and serene. He is doing his duty, swinging a smoking censer. There is no dramatic grief on the face of the soldier. Instead, it shows exhaustion. He has seen such scenes many times, and this ritual has become routine for him. He holds behind his back the hands clutching a cap and the Bible. Behind him rises a mound of freshly turned earth topped with a cross. All those who fell on this field await a mass grave. The entire painting is permeated with the sorrow of personal loss. Even the sky seems to weep. The rain here is undeniably symbolic. The painting became part of Vereshchagin's Balkan cycle, and the exhibitions caused a sensation. It seemed as though the entire population of the cities came to see these unusual works. Viewers were filled with awe and admiration. Once, a priest visited the exhibition and told high-ranking guests that it was he who had conducted that very Requiem service after the fighting in Bulgaria, and that the painting was absolutely truthful. Yet there were also those who disliked the painting. Vereshchagin was accused of anti-patriotism and of falsifying reality. But it is well known that the most self-assured and all-knowing patriots tend to express their outrage far from the front lines. They had never seen the bloody battles of the Balkan War. Vereshchagin had. The Balkan campaign was won, but at what cost? This is precisely what the artist reminds us of in this painting. On this canvas, we see a lonely, old woman. Her advanced age is revealed by her tired, hunched back and the walking stick protruding beside her. Around her, there is not a soul in sight. A dark, cold winter night. Only graves rise above the snowdrifts. One detail immediately catches the eye. A small Christmas tree, the main symbol of the new year. 2 candles glow brightly. One the elderly woman holds in her hand, the other she has placed in the snow. But what drove this aged lady to go to a cemetery at midnight? Why is she welcoming the new year not in a warm apartment at a set table, but in a dark and frozen graveyard? The story behind this painting was told by the artist himself, Sergey Andriyaka. In 1984, while visiting his father's grave during the winter holidays, he happened to encounter an old woman purely by chance. The elderly woman shared her sorrowful story with him. It turned out that just before the new year, her only daughter had died. She had no husband, no brothers or sisters, and she was left completely alone in the world. On New Year's Eve, the old woman came to the cemetery, set up a small Christmas tree, decorated it with ornaments, and lit 2 candles. One for herself and one for her daughter. That was how she greeted the new year. The story struck Sergey so deeply that he decided to paint the scene immediately. It is worth noting that he possessed an exceptional photographic memory and was famous for his landscapes, which he often painted from memory. That is why, in the distance, we can see Moscow glowing with festive lights. The city is submerged in warmth and celebration, which seem unbearably distant and alien against the backdrop of the lonely old woman. She chose the silent company of her deceased daughter over the noise and happiness of the great city. The main message of this painting is that behind the powerful energy of the year's most important holiday, behind the glow of garlands and the rustle of gift wrapping, there may exist another life, one that is anything but festive. Everyone greets the new year in their own way. While some rejoice and celebrate, others bury those closest to them. Perhaps similar thoughts visited the Swedish landscape painter Otto Hesselbom, who nearly a century earlier, in 1896, painted his work Christmas Eve at the Grave. Whether Sergey Andriyaka was inspired by this painting is unknown, but both works are equally tragic and heart-rending. Each of these paintings reminds us that fear is born not only from horror, but also from the awareness of the inevitable: death, loss, loneliness. And the longer we gaze, the more we realize the most unsettling thing in these paintings is not what is depicted, but what could happen to any of us.